great. Yeah, good talk about Gavin.
A bit closer, I think.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't tried yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I welcome you all to this panel hearing of the Age-Friendly Darebin Review. I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Pay my respects to their elders past and present, and to any elders from communities that may be with us today. The purpose of this afternoon is to hear from people who've made submissions to the Age-Friendly Darebin Review that Dr. Rhonda Galvalley and I are providing advice to Council on. We've got a busy schedule over the next few hours, and we'd ask people, we've received copies of all the submissions that people have made, and we're providing an opportunity this afternoon for people to speak to those submissions. We'd ask people to limit their presentations to 3-minute slots, providing where appropriate opportunities for us to ask questions. So there's a lot of people who've indicated they want to present this afternoon, so we will have a fairly busy schedule, but it will provide first-hand advice and experience to Rhonda and I that will help inform us about what could or should be done in the future to make Darebin even more age-friendly than it is now. So thank you to all the people who have made submissions, and thank you to the people who are going to make their verbal presentations this afternoon. I think people know what order they are presenting in, and if I could ask Mr. Poulos, who I think is making the first submission. Oh, Mr. and Mrs.? Yes. Wonderful.
So I push the buttons.
Well, we have a few things we want to say. We find the government websites impossible to deal with. Centrelink is just a nightmare. Medicare can be just as bad. If you're getting a passport, that's terrible too. So I don't know how older people cope with them. I have someone who's been giving me computer lessons for a couple of years, and she helps me. But if you're on your own, I mean, grandchildren are okay, but, you know. And then there's the bank websites. If you're not fast enough, they log you out, and you have to start all over again. And all those things are very difficult for people of our age. We didn't grow up in a digital world. We do our best, but, you know.
Yeah, and also the other point is, as you get older, you're slower. And even if you do have quite good computer knowledge, you're slower. And you get locked out of MyGov and bank websites and whatever. The feeling is that you're trying to hack into the website, so that you're locked out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So that's important. We need some sort of assistance, some advice to help older people.
Yes, and going to lessons isn't always the way that helps. Sometimes coming to your home and helping you is easier because it goes at your pace, whereas lessons can go, you know, they go at the fastest, really. So there's that. And the other thing is the exercise things that the council runs. You know, some of us are really quite fit. I'm a physiotherapist, and I really think you need a good exercise program. What about a Zumba class that is in the mornings, not at 6 o'clock at night. Or again, a yoga class, which is also really good for people. So.
Okay, and before we finish, 3 minutes, I put in a plug. I've just finished a book called The Secret Life of Chemicals. It's all about chemical pollutants, where they come from, and the way they affect our health. I think it's important that the council knows that people within this community here have written this sort of book, and if the council is interested to talk to me about aspects or things that were raised in this particular book, please do. Okay? Mm-hmm. The Secret Life of Chemicals. And I'm Professor Alfred Poulos.
Do you have any questions?
Well, yes, I mean, I think it's really very interesting and valuable what you're saying about the real difficulty in navigating through, you know, and also the more general issue of internet and, you know, the whole technical age and the assistance you think local government might be able to give for older people, especially as my aged care, you know, it's really very important to be able to be online.
Yeah,
so
it is.
That's really important.
And you don't always want your grandchildren, you know, checking your bank accounts and things.
Not everyone's got them, so...
I mean, you know, we trust ours, but, you know.
I think classes would help. You know,
well, if they
classes,
run slowly and at people's
would
pace. Yeah.
But you were also suggesting that something where people could come to your home to get you going.
Yes, well, we're fortunate enough that I could afford to have someone come to my home to help me, because I do all that infrastructure stuff. And I've been very lucky, but there must be people out there who can't. And if the council, you know, were providing something like that, even if it's just 2 or 3 visits and you can ring up and say, I'm having trouble with this. The internet is another thing. You know, we have a nightmare with our internet. We've got someone coming this afternoon because it's driving us nuts. But, you know, that's another thing, you know, the internet connection and what kind of Wi-Fi you've got. And with the NBN coming, okay, probably had my say.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry.
I've just got one more question, because we've heard from other people about the exercise opportunities not being suitable necessarily for older people.
Yes.
And so people can get injuries and trying to keep up.
Right. Well, that's true. I'm a physiotherapist, so I know about what you're talking about. And many people, I find, cannot get up and down off the floor, and that's a real handicap for them. If they fall over, or if they're wanting to play with small grandchildren, they cannot get up and down. So I think that classes, you know, for my age group, I would prefer, you know, a 9:30 class. I go to a Zoom class.
That's
it's
the
a
time.
9:30, and that's a good time. I'm not going to go at 6.
But concentrating on some things that are really
Mobility.
practical. Yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
mobility, and maybe strength too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Right.
I think... Linda Finger. Oh, great. Sure. Although that one's too close, that's distorting.
Hello, I'm Linda.
Welcome.
Thank you. I've lived in Northcote for approximately 40 years, and some of the things I'm mentioning are to do with being familiar with places. So I'm talking about 2 topics that are in page 8 of the discussion paper, one being beyond the home, the other being connecting and contributing. So I'm only talking about 2 points from my notes. So the first one, beyond the home, I'd like to make a comment about accessibility, particularly for those using wheelchairs or mobility scooters. The high street shops I'm familiar with the area between Clark Street and Separation Street, and I did a rough audit in the last few days. And the area between Clark Street and Separation has approximately 200 dwellings, and only 75 of those I would consider be easy access for a wheelchair. and also the Westgarth shops, where there are 55 dwellings, about 18 have what I would call accessibility. Some might have a lip, and I didn't count them in, I'm afraid. I think if it's only a lip this big, it could be shaved. So my point is, could council require shop owners to, within a certain period of time, convert their shops to entrances to ramps? I know new buildings, obviously it's a requirement. Just as an aside, some of those venues that have steps are popular music venues, which really excludes people. Okay, the second point is to do with connecting and contributing, and I want to focus on volunteering. There's quite a few demographic changes which I think would have broadened the skills base of retirees in our area in the last few years. The council website I found rather lacking in anything about volunteers. Under a list of different bits and pieces, there was mention of neighbourhood houses, which is one area where people do volunteer. I know Diverse is an organisation in Preston that uses volunteers to run social programs, but they have specific job descriptions on their website for people. So I'm not aware that there is any training for volunteers in a formal way in the area. So my proposal would be that there might be a coordinator who works for council, who themselves could be trained by Volunteers Victoria, who would then coordinate, would be this first point of call for people wanting to volunteer, who would interview and train these people in the parameters of being a volunteer, the rights and responsibilities of being a volunteer, and then would match those volunteers to community organisations like sports clubs or whatever, so that there's a point of contact. So they're my two main issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I mean, you've covered some really valuable points in terms of, particularly, I think, things that are appropriate for council to be doing and comparatively easy, if there's a will, and all of them will sort of help make Darebin more age-friendly on my reading of the likely implications.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Jeanette Pope?
So Jeanette is not here, Jodie's here.
Jodie, okay. Jodie has it.
No, just, yeah. Hello.
Hi, Jodie.
Sorry, Jeanette is an apology. She's had a death in the family. But she's given me what she'd intended to say, so I will read that out. My name's Jodie, and I will speak in the second aspect. So Jeanette did the Ageing Well consultation of over 1,000 residents across the north, and two issues emerged that people thought would impact on their ability to age well in the community. The first was social isolation, and the second was being able to address small needs to live independently in the community that aren't currently being met by existing services. Things like taking out your wheelie bin, changing light bulbs, getting help with digital services. There were nearly 100 unmet needs identified throughout that consultation. So there are a whole lot of collectivist activities emerging in our communities already that could solve these issues. And older residents in the focus groups resonated with these because they've got community connection at the heart of them. And for a lot of the older residents, that's what the major concern was. And it wasn't just for older residents, it was about community connection across community more generally. So following the consultation, she asked 60 organisations from the collaborative economy across the north to come to an ideas hack. They came up with a framework for how councils could support those initiatives. And they also came up with a few new ideas, and I'm here to talk about one of those ideas that also follows on from what the lady's talking about with volunteering and connection that was mentioned in the report. So we know older people on one hand are isolated and disconnected. We know younger people are looking for community connection and social purpose in their lives. But ironically, they're, pitted against each other in the mainstream economy. They're actually in competition. So there's a strong driver for change there, but there isn't a market mechanism to bring them together to collaborate. So we're looking to establish a new market mechanism within the community that would do just that. It's about cross-generational and cross-sector collaborations. So it's called the sharing tree. We want to capitalise on the strong driver and get people sharing their skills and resources across community. They would earn points for doing that, and in return they can use those points to access the skills and resources of the neighbourhood in a place-based approach, as well as going to local business and getting a service there. So we want to move, this model wants to move away from traditional volunteering and welfare-oriented models into a more contribution type model, where people are participating and getting all sorts of intangible benefits from that in terms of their self-esteem, confidence and well-being, overall well-being. So that's a participatory exchange model that we're proposing. We see immense opportunity for that cross-generationally and cross-sectorally, so getting businesses, community services and community involved, and that's what the model really underlying is about. So the neighbourhood point system would work similar to a flyby system, where you'd earn points for doing the things, the small tasks I mentioned, like putting out wheelie bins, whatever is required. There's a diversity of needs, small task type needs, not covered by existing services. And then in return, you could go down and get a coffee at your local cafe, you could go for a yoga class, or you could go on a bus ride and go to a theatre or a concert. So we really want to establish spend opportunities that get people out into the community, and we also want to promote physical activity. We have had the Victorian Sport Commission look at our proposal, and they're very interested in what we're proposing. So it's all about contributing to community wellness in that way as well through our activities. In terms of the social isolation, there's another aspect to the model. We want to look at community connectors so that people would be trained in the community to go out, assess an older person, build a relationship with them and know as their needs change what is required, because that was identified in the Ideas Hack as a big issue, a lack of information about current services as needs are changing. So that's another aspect. And thinking laterally about how you can contribute, what resources you have yourself, as well as how we can fulfil your needs across community services, business and community. So it's a model, it's a proven model. It's already running in the UK, and I have some information here, a summary of the outcomes. We've been working in a mentoring capacity with the UK model. They have over 50,000 members across the UK. It's actually really big, and they've been about 100,000 credits spent in the last year in that model. So it's having great benefits and impacts across the UK. So I'll leave that here for you to have a look at. There's some formal evaluation reports available as well. So we imagine the potential power of a market mechanism like that here in Darebin, with 50,000 people participating. And I guess the importance of something like that in developing a participation culture, which we think is really important for a lot of these modern day challenges that we're facing. While these sort of collaborative economies are not profitable, that's why there aren't many around. A lot of people that are involved are just passionate and see such opportunity with them. As I'd said, there's such potential for them in terms of developing a participation culture. That's why they're immensely important, rather than the profit aspect. And it's really hard to get something new and innovative like this off the ground, because it's not really existing in Australia. So we're looking, the next step is to get a council partner on board to just help legitimate and build that trust with the community that this is something worth investing in. And as residents of Darebin, we would love for the first place to be here. Yeah, that's why I'm here today, is to just let you know there are other ways and approaches, I think, to community coming on board and contributing and participating in the solutions to a lot of these issues. Thank you. I think I'm under time, am I?
Thank you.
Awesome.
And Jodie, do older people also earn points by doing stuff for other people?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's.
Could they babysit, or what sort of,
Yeah.
what does the UK model show that they do?
That
so
they're
is
doing.
It truly
Absolutely, yeah, it's very diverse. So some people are offering morning tea, so a little picnic, more isolated people. They want people to come to the house so they feel they're contributing something to the visit as well. But people were doing, there was boat building skills, renos, teaching how to make passata. There's all sorts of cultural capital there that people are offering as well. It's extremely diverse. Some people love gardening. They're out weeding and doing the things they love, ironing, childminding, extremely diverse. And if you think about the life experience and wisdom, you know, of people, that's all there when they get older. And it's just about capitalising on that. And that's why the community connector model is important, to help bring that out and make it tangible for people. Yeah.
I was reading about it a bit in your hack report.
Oh, yeah.
And so, unlike a babysitting club, it isn't... you get other things, you get coffees, so it's not quite the same as building up a stack of points that you can then use to get people to do stuff for you. It's not quite like that.
You're building up points.
And can you use those points to get somebody to do something for you?
To do things for you,
Okay.
Which, whatever is available in this network, which can be very diverse. So with businesses on board and community on board, you'll have a whole heap of things that you can use those points for. You can also gift them to people so that you can help someone in need.
And what would the Sports Commission, how would they use it?
They're really interested in getting people active. So if they could give us sporting opportunities that you can spend the points on, so, you know, you can go along and spend your points to go do cricket for an hour, or they want to get people active, so they'd like to use this platform to do that.
Well, it'd be great to have all the evaluation if you could
of course.
leave us with that.
I'll forward that on. And this is a snapshot of, you know, they did I guess a snapshot of the impact on community, just quick stats if you would like that.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
So, Jodie, in the UK, does the model include mechanisms to manage risks associated with
absolutely.
bad people getting involved?
Yes, I didn't mention all that, but yeah, in terms of you'd need police checks, we'd need insurance, they do all of that, and there haven't been any incidents. They've covered that off really well. They shared a lot about that, actually. Okay. So it's great to have them on board, and they've been very, very forthcoming in sharing all of their resources and learnings over the last 10 years they've been doing this.
And so you'd run it as an NGO, so somebody's got to run it.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
I'll just leave that there. Or would you like me to?
Yeah, no, I don't mind how, as long as we get it.
I'll forward the evaluations.
Thank you. Terrific. And anything else you've got?
Sure, I have heaps.
Send it in.
Thank you.
Robert? Is Robert... Yeah? We're getting ahead of ourselves. Linda might be here. No, Linda. So who did we missed somebody out though, didn't we? Oh, okay. I think we just relax. Thank you for your submission, Robert.
Your ideas and followed through to various other places, so thank you for that.
No problem, thank you very much.
I think you had a PowerPoint. Or
I don't need
slides.
it, I'm just going to speak.
Okay, so we shouldn't set that up?
No, it's okay.
Right, that's fine.
Unless there's specific questions about something, I can present something, but...
Is this the PowerPoint in here? Yeah.
No, I just...
That's fine.
There's something different I intended to show, but I'll just stick to some of the contents I
And
have
then maybe
here.
we could take a copy of it. Yeah.
You can have a copy of the thing I was
That'd be great.
Okay, fine, I'll do that. The presentation was about a submission to the Australian Building Code.
Yeah.
So that might be of interest.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, Sweet, I'll do that.
Riveted I was.
Riveted on building code?
Absolutely riveted.
All right. When do I start? Oh, have I already started?
Well, I just think it's so incredibly important and sort of a bit mad that we're so late in Australia to come to this position, and whether or not you think that's going to all change.
In relation to the approach and how we look at building our homes,
Yeah.
I am struggling to come to the conclusion of that. I've spoken to people over the course of 2 years. I've spoken to the Australian Building Board, I've spoken to the HIA, I've spoken to Department of Planning, I've spoken to about probably 6 different building surveyors, I've spoken to numbers of councils, planners, and no one has a solution at the moment. However, there has to be a solution. I'm absolutely adamant there will be a solution at the end of the day, as long as there's enough people talking about it and debating it. There has not been one single person through all those conversations that I've had of anyone saying this is a bad idea.
Are you connected to the disability, to the campaign for this?
No.
I'll put you in touch with it. I think they'd love to know that you're working on this.
More than happy to be a part of it.
That'd be really great, yeah, because people are very hopeful that this latest change may finally get to where the UK got to in 97. So 97, you can't build a house downstairs where the downstairs isn't visitable and accessible in the UK since 97. It's illegal. So it's just sort of terrible in Australia, isn't it?
Terrible is one way of putting it. Maybe just needing some more awareness and finding solutions to some of the challenges.
Anyway, it's great stuff. So it's just going to be very interesting to think through council, isn't it? In terms of, you know, in a different city, I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying this today, but in a different city, not Darebin, I rang up and said, look, there's these shops being refurbished. Somebody had this, I think it was yours, you know, and they're not, doesn't look like they're making them accessible. And the building regulating guy said, oh, well, that's not the law. They don't have to. And I thought, well, what a bad person for local government, you know, where he could have said, look, it's not the law, but I encourage you very strongly because, and these are the 10 ways you could do it. So at least Darebin, I'm sure they do it that way. I hope, but it'll certainly be, we'll explore the limits to which local government can push that boundary. And Darebin was one of the very brave ones that joined with the VLGA groups. I think it was Yarra, anyway, it was a few, to try and get planning to move on this about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And right at the last minute they lost it because federally they set up a voluntary code which hasn't worked. Surprise, surprise. Self-regulation hasn't worked. And the people who opposed, I won't go on, but you can imagine who they are. You can imagine who they are. So yours is great, like really important.
Well, that's why I took the effort to put it down on paper, and
yeah,
unless you do that, it's not going to get far. But can I address you as Rhonda? Is that okay? To be fair to Darebin, I don't think they're discouraging homes to be built with accessibility requirements. I guess my proposal is to suggest that changing the provision of space and the design of space is a very resourceful, intensive objective in any regards, and it takes time. And therefore, it might take 10, 15 years for this to happen. There's a whole range of things in this paper, but I guess I'm really focusing on the space and the design of space.
Yeah.
Now, that's where planning comes into play. It provides the provision for people to be able to embark on delivering the space that is necessary for all groups of society. And ashamedly, I think, as a society, and as a reflection of this panel and the fact that we have a Royal Commission on Ageing, society has neglected the age issue, which is a shame in some regards. And I think that's, but I guess having 401 submissions come here is a great awareness that there are people who are very interested and very focused in finding solutions, and we all can play a part in that. This is a very small part, my submission. But the provision of space is a long-term, resourceful, intensive, and there needs to be some solutions that need to be tested by councils. Some have embarked on and are open to the suggestion of a multi-generational home or one that allows for independent carers. But that generally is only on a situation where it's a single-storey building. Now, that's fair and well if you don't live within 15 or 20 kilometres of Melbourne, CBD. What an interesting fact I'd like to put forward is that it took 175 years to build 2 million homes in Melbourne. It's going to take, or the need is, 2 million homes in the next 35 to 40 years. So there is going to be an impact in the densification of our city, regardless of what the intake is of the population. Therefore, we have to find sensitive solutions to the densification of this issue. We're also got to find a solution to the accessibility requirements. The multi-generational house provides an opportunity for that to occur. You can design a product that is sensitive to the densification issues, but provides opportunities for accessibility requirements, be it for the elderly or those with greater needs, whilst make sure that the family are connected still for the longest period of time possible. The issues that we have with design and the way that the planning system is structured, we have a shoebox for a young person, we have a boot box for a couple, then we go into another home, and then when we retire, we go into a different home. There are 4 or 5 different changes as a result of the lack of dynamics of the planning and the building code at the moment. Families are very, very dynamic. They shift and change all the time, but our planning system doesn't allow our buildings to do such. And I think there is something horribly wrong about that. As you can see in my submission, there's an example of, on an international level, it is one of the key requirements and focuses of design in general. I indicated there's a building conference, design and building conference in Germany. It's the biggest one in Europe every 2 years. They have focused on that three times in a row. Last year, they had a multi-generational house exhibition. This year, it's about accessibility and flexibility in design. Flexibility in design, for me, has a far greater benefit to sustainability than putting in double glazing windows, because that house is getting used. All the material in that product is going to be used. So there's so many varieties and benefits, which are in my paper, and I won't go into those details, but I think it gets neglected when it goes down into a planning and a building code requirement. It's black and white, and there's no room to move. But yet, from all the information that I've gathered, Council has the mechanisms and the tools to be leaders and be able to make the necessary decisions to encourage this form of development, and therefore I believe it should. There's no reason why it should wait for the federal government or for even the broader state government. It's demonstrated, particularly with the environmental issues, that local action does a lot greater and a lot quicker, and if you wait for the federal outcomes, you'll be behind the 8 ball in a long way.
Thank you very much. It's really very,
Yeah,
very, very important.
it's a great idea.
So I'm more than happy to present to anyone in this office, any councillor, any department, any planning department, the building department, anyone, I'm more than prepared to go through this in more detail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much.
I guess that's it for me, is it? No more questions?
Yep. But
And if you can give us your PowerPoint, that'd be great.
It would probably just be the submission to the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Robert.
Thank you.
We've got Lindsay Phillips. Is Lindsay? This is the community shed.
Kitchen.
So it's just been invited to set up
Oh, okay.
presentation.
No worries. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
There you go. Hello.
you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for seeing this. Just like to introduce myself, Lindsay Phillips. I'm from Community Chef. My colleague May is in the audience there as well. We made a submission, our CEO made a submission, he couldn't be here today, so we're here in his stead. That's scrolling for some reason. So I just wanted to give a little brief overview about just Community Chef and what our interest, in the ageing community is. So we're a food manufacturing social enterprise. So we're based in Altona, so we're local. We're only relatively young. We've been around since about 2010. We were set up as part of a shared services arrangement with a number of local councils back then when there was issues trying to service the Meals on Wheels market. So we're based in a state-of-the-art facility, jointly owned currently by 16 shareholder councils throughout Victoria, metropolitan and regional. Darebin Council was one of the founding shareholders in the company way back then. Sorry about that. And since then, we've been the supplier of Commonwealth Home Support Program meals for Darebin Council and a number of other councils as well. We're also supplying to, as I said, to multiple councils. We supply food into various hospitals and aged care facilities as well. So the focus of the presentation for us is very much on healthy food, healthy eating, and how that service can best be delivered to the Darebin residents. So in our view, council needs to ensure that the elderly in the community have a secure, stable and ready access to some tasty, nutritious, well-presented meals. Members of the community consume healthy and balanced meals. They're better able to maintain a healthy and active lifestyle. And that's important for a number of reasons. People that are healthy, active, can maintain their mobility capacity. They're still able to get out and about and not stuck at home. So they have maintain a higher level of independence, hopefully. Individuals that can maintain that high level of independence and a high level of activity and mobility, that tends to lead to reduced need to rely on acute health services, other acute health services, whether that be hospitals, ambulances, or other services provided by councils, such as cleaning or maintaining gardens, etc., etc. And it's important also, mobility means that individuals, they're not trapped in their homes, they can leave their homes, they're still able to socialise with others in the community, and they can retain that connection to the community, still feel they're involved, active members of the community. So moving forward, sorry, this keeps skipping around, I don't know why it's doing that. So our views on some of the things moving forward is look at maybe rebranding or relaunching the Meals on Wheels model that currently exists. Meals on Wheels has been around for a number of years. It's probably a little bit old and tired and has some certain, in some people's minds, has stigmas attached to it, people receiving Meals on Wheels. And so we think it's maybe time to look at trying to rebrand that and bring it into the 21st century. That stigma of receiving Meals on Wheels, in the past it was thought maybe once you went on Meals on Wheels, that was sort of it for life. It's certainly not the case now. Councils are very much proactive in their assessments of people's needs and stuff like that. So individuals now really are receiving the food on an as-needs basis. If they have an accident or they fall ill for a period of time or something like that, and they're deemed to require assistance for that period of time, then that's sort of the model, the way the model's moved recently. So it's important that we I think we break that nexus to say, the Meals on Wheels, it's not a lifelong thing anymore. It's all about needs and making sure the individual, when they need it, has access to those particular services. So accessibility of meals, obviously that's a key thing currently as the model exists. Delivery to the door is the prime method of getting meals to the individuals, making sure that they receive the food that's required when they need it. That's something that we're certainly geared up to do. We deal with a lot of NDIS clients and stuff like that at the moment, so we're delivering those meals to their doors currently. Things like, other thoughts, maybe things like, meal collections from different pickup points around the area, and again, that's to try and encourage people to get out and about and remain active. And one of the other thoughts, which has worked successfully, like Moonee Valley Council have established a cafe which they use to provide meals to the elderly people in their community. So something similar to that could be encouraged here as well. And whether that is, and I think Hobson's Bay in the past have done a similar service out of one of the local libraries in the council as well. So it could be anything, any council-owned facility, whether it's libraries, community centres, halls, and that's important as well to get people out of their house, get them still involved in the community, and provide somewhere for them to come together, to meet, to have a meal, and sort of it's something for them to do during the day. And you could also look at providing subsidies for those individuals that have certain healthcare cards or seniors cards and stuff like that as well. So they sort of get a benefit through that as well.
It's just, we've just gone on time, so I'm just letting you know.
Yes, yep, last slide. It's gone right back. So the final thing was just looking at things as well, like special functions for Christmas parties, Easter, grand final days, Anzac days. These are particular times when if the elderly residents don't have family or many friends around to support them, can be times when they're particularly lonely or whatever. So it's a good opportunity to get people together to celebrate the big occasions and stuff like that. Again, that could be council-based facilities, local halls, shire halls, council halls, community centres, that type of thing. And I think that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions or would like to know anything more.
Two questions. One is Darebin still involved?
Sorry?
Is Darebin still involved?
Yes, we're still supplying Darebin. Yes, absolutely.
The other one is, are you providing meals under the new Commonwealth home care arrangements?
Yes, we are. So as I said, we supply a lot of Meals on Wheels, and we've just recently become involved in the NDIS and supplying individuals for that, hospitals, aged care centres. So we're well versed in being able to do that, and we're starting to deliver a mechanism which previously it was to individual councils, and then councils took the distribution, that final step to the door. But we've sort of now developed the capacity to be able to do that as well.
Good.
Have you are using volunteers in some local government areas to deliver the meals?
Yeah, some councils are. Councils are different. I'm not exactly sure what Darebin's model is. Some have paid employees.
That's them, not you.
Correct.
But
we do have the capacity. If council, a council came to us and said, "Can you deliver the meals to the door?" We now have the sort of facilities to be able to do that.
But you don't use volunteers to do that?
No, we use paid employees.
And with the Moonee Valley Cafe, do you provide the food?
We do, yes.
But not in the packs, so...
we provide bulk food, so they basically reheat it on site and serve it on site. Yeah.
Right. And for the Christmas parties, and that's all bulk food?
Yes,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you had any programs where you've taken the food in and helped people, with their own cooking and wanting to do things themselves?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know if she do. Do you know of anything? No. Yeah, it's not something we have done.
And have you got plans for different sorts of programs that are a bit more mixed into the future?
Again, if there was a need, it would certainly be something that we would look at. I mean, at the moment, our focus is on the provision of the food services. But if there was found to be a big need for maybe going in and training elderly people or whoever it is, whether it's the facilities at councils on how to best prepare and serve the food, then that's something we'd certainly
There's
consider.
one local government authority where they deliver the food warm. I think it was.
We don't do that. No.
Because of the dangers.
Yeah, well, it's just easier. All our food's served refrigerated. It's kept refrigerated. It's delivered to councils, and they store it in their refrigerated facilities, and then they distribute it. So for the individual recipients that get the meals at the moment, they reheat it in a microwave.
And so, how many local government authorities are you doing the delivery yourself?
To the door.
Yeah.
No, at the moment, all the councils still are
doing it themselves.
Yeah. Yes, correct.
So you're not taking up the issue of knowing when someone's, not answering the door or anything.
Correct. I mean,
you are for NDIS.
We are for NDIS.
And what do you do when they don't answer the door for NDIS?
Well, we would follow it up. Generally with NDIS, they've popped out, or something's happened. They forgot to notify us that they're not going to be home or something like that. So we would follow up with their sort of care provider, whoever whichever agency is in charge of them. We'd follow up with a phone call to try and find out where they are. So generally, if they've gone into hospital or they're away or something like that, they will notify us and let us know beforehand, and they'll cancel the delivery.
But sort of, if they're struggling inside and you don't know, would that be alerted, and would someone go in and check?
Look, if there was something that was obviously wrong, then yes, we would ring the care provider and say, we went and visited whoever it was, Joanne Smith today, and if she was acting erratically or seemed to be extremely upset or something like that, then we would notify them of that. But at the moment, our service is we basically go in, we deliver the food, we drop it into their, sometimes we put it in their fridge for them, have a bit of, the drivers tend to have a bit of a chat, but obviously they're on a, relatively tight deadline, so they spend maybe a couple of minutes with them, and then move on to the next delivery.
Right, thanks.
That's it.
Thanks. It's a great service.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Jean and Anne-Marie.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon. We're a tandem act. I'm from U3A Darebin,
Yep.
and you know what that's about. And so we offer we actually don't offer a service. We get people to come in and be involved with us, and as a result, they manage to live a really good life. And I brought Jean along, who's been with us, and Jean will tell you about her experience at Darebin. There you go.
Well, I started with Darebin U3A way back in the year 2000. A friend took me along and introduced me on the first day in re-enrolments, and I've been doing classes and also convening a couple of classes since. We do everything as voluntary. There's no one paid for anything we do. There was a time when I was doing 6 different classes per week. I was pulled out of school at age 14 because a family needed me to work, and so I didn't get a chance to get an education. And over the last 18 years, I think I've made up for that for myself and in helping other people. I run 2, we call them needlecraft classes, that people bring whatever needlecraft they want to do, whether it be embroidery or knitting or whatever. And we also, in those classes, do knitting for a group called COGO. And since we started knitting for them in the year 2013, we have presented to them over 800 items. I believe that U3A is very essential for people of my age. It gives you a reason to get up when things go wrong in your life, when you've had a sadness or a loss of someone in your family. It gives you a reason to get up and go there and be with people and not just sit at home and not want to do anything. For a little while in around about 2010, with a lady called Nell Bell, we used to come up here in High Street to teach English to a group of Vietnamese people, which was also a really wonderful experience for me. And I'm sure that there are very many people in U3A that are quite similar for different reasons. I've got one lady that still comes. She was in the needlecraft class when I first started in it. She's now 93 and she still comes nearly every week. Thank you.
So what Jean says is a anecdotal story of a lot of people. It really does get people up and about, and we have people when their partners die. It's the connection that keeps them going. And one lady said to me the other day, "Oh well, if I wasn't here, I'd be just home." And so I believe that what we offer as a whole, we keep people out of care, we keep people alive, we keep people out of hospital, and all we've asked for. All we've asked for is some ongoing funding, because we're funded by member payments, and every year we run at something like a $2,000 loss. If we didn't have any grants, we wouldn't be able to survive. And so all we really want is for the Darebin Council to pay us about $4,000 a year, and that would ensure that we could expand. It's really scary when you're on a committee and you're trying to run another class somewhere, if it's going to cost you for rent and if it's going to cost you for facilities. It's a really scary thing if it's all kind of, we'll do this and see what happens. But the other thing for me in U3A, it means that as a person who worked, you get achievement out of working. One of the things that happens when you work is you get a lot of it, you get rewarded for your achievement. And U3A offers achievement to lots of people, and I think that's one of the things. Jean's on our committee. She's been able to make things happen and do things that she probably never dreamed she would be able to do, and she's one of a lot. So look, $4,000 a year, it's not going to really break them. So, thank you for that.
That's a fine pitch.
Thank you very much.
Just before you go, so you're spread right throughout
Darebin, yes.
Yeah. And so you're in every sort of part.
We're not so far north. I mean, it's the Bell Street line. We're not so far north. We have we have a few classes further north, but mostly we pick up people. We operate out of the Fairfield station, but we have people that come from Kingsville, and people come from a long way.
So they come from a long way.
Yeah.
But would you want to operate more out there if you could?
Well, we'd like a better venue, because we could. The venue's very small, and a better venue with good parking, because parking's an issue, because we have a number of people who are with disabilities on walking frames, and there's really nowhere for them to park, and parking's a bit of an issue. I've got an eye on Untitled House, so when you're looking at what's happening over there, you can. But
you see it as a model where people come in.
Oh, I think so.
Rather than being mobile, where you would go out.
We do go out, but we can't get close. They'll still have to come in. We work out of Northcote Town Hall. We work out of Preston. We work out of Reservoir, the library in Reservoir. So we're about, but
Marylands.
And Marylands, yes.
Preston. Elderly citizens.
Where would you go if you could get?
Well, there's a place there's the Untitled House. I don't know if you've caught up with it. Part of that would be ideal for us, because it would have an office that's got some big rooms that we could use for our exercise classes, and a really useful kitchen. Where we are now, people like, and we wouldn't want to lose it, it's a small classroom with a small office, and it's on the train line, so it's kind of handy for people to get there.
And is the $50 a barrier, do you think, to
I wouldn't think to too many. It's only $50 for a whole year. That's only $1 a week.
Yeah, not really. Mostly we'll see how it goes this year. I don't think we'll lose many members because of it. But it's a big whack. They pay it just before Christmas.
That's right. That's the big
deal.
So you'd rather have not put up the fee?
We would have rather not put up the fee.
How much was it before?
It was 45. It's been sneaking up over years.
Yeah. And do you find the term university, is that off-putting to some of the people you'd rather reach? Have you got an outreach program where you go into...
I think
to get people...
For some initially, but mostly once they look at what we have to offer, because we offer intellectual stimulation as well as yoga and Tai Chi and book groups and history groups. And I think once that people look at it and they go, oh yeah, well, you know, it's not too highfalutin. And Jean came along.
Well, the thing is, once you hear that there's no exams, there's nothing like that to sit, or virtually no homework. Now, I mean, if you're doing knitting or needlecraft, yes, you do, and there's a couple of others. If you're learning French, you might have to, and Italian. But there's very little of that, and once you explain that to people, they're fine.
And the Shakespeare group expect them to do a little bit of extra work, but you join that, and people will join, and then they think, oh, well, this one's not for me, so they'll try something else.
So. Who are the groups you'd like to have the resources to reach out to, if you could, and bring them in?
Well, we'd like to get further into Reservoir and up further
so
north.
Geographically,
yes, geographically we would. And we'd also, I know a lot of the ethnic groups have got their own groups. We've got a few people, we've got a number of Chinese people in our organisation that come along now, but actually getting the wider reach is difficult. What we would need would be tutors from those groups, and it's a time issue getting out there and presenting and doing all those things.
Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for listening.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Hello. You have to excuse because the lighting, I've got a vision loss which I can't say when it is too glare comes in. So I'll have to be in dark glasses for that reason.
It's over to you to tell us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So are the things you want to suggest to us additional to your submission?
Yeah, additional to my submission, number one is I don't want to lose this service because it's a fantastic service which for aged friendly is the most wonderful thing for people who have no family like myself. You get someone coming every week, which is, sorry that it really feels very hard for me. They are like part of the family. I have a rare condition, which I lose my eyesight when I get lots of fractures. So this service, if it is not there, someone coming in the morning, you get friendly, over the years have been coming, the service has been there, and if it is extended to keep going, whatever the government funding to come, it's a lot of people whose survive, have a lease of new life, to be honest. It gives a new lease of life, you know. In my really difficult days, someone was there to do the personal care for me when it was needed, and someone, when I was in a wheelchair, and to be able to get to the crutches, which was a marvelous step for me, with the help of the person who comes from the council, take me out for shopping, have the patience. I don't think anyone else can fulfill what is trained by these people to work for age-friendly, you know, to people who have disabilities, even otherwise to walk along with them. I cannot do a whole shopping supermarket, so I have to hire a scooter when I get there, and for the understanding that I needed that, I go slow, so the person who comes with me is well trained, given all information. So it's to lose such service, people like me will be very crippled, very crippled. So this is one of, if you can easily get very depressed, and mostly when you don't have a family to turn to. There may be a lot of people like me. I have no relatives here. I have no family here. And I live by myself. So it's that's part of the family life when they help you to do your shopping, to get you to other activities. The council gives fee to do shopping on your own also if you wanted to. They have a bus service. So my concern is, if we lose this, what will happen to us? Where we will be without. That's a big fear, you know. So it's quite taken off. It's part of the mind and soul, you know, are thinking every day, do we hear any good news, which we terribly, terribly needed to keep going this service and to have that life what we have now. And so that's why I'm here. And I'm not just speaking for myself. I speak for all the others who get the services. I hope they all get the same service as much as I get. I've been very happy. I'm probably getting services for the last 25 years with my disabilities because of that. So it's very rewarding. Without that, I wouldn't be able to manage at all. No way, because I cannot see very well. I cannot walk a lot, even inside the house, and put things away and come and have a little chat. You have all that services, you know, in one whole package. So it's very important for people who live by themselves and who are taken out for shopping, because there's someone always talking to you, and you never feel any difficulty, pain or anything, you know, you're just concentrating that friendship. I have someone to go with me to get my needs done. So that was very, very the high point of my coming here. You know, I had 2 medical appointments and come home for 10 minutes and in here. So that's sort of my life, which is, I have to, you know, so it's a great service. One of the very best I've had. I never had any problem with the staff. They're very friendly, they're caring, spot on. If there's a cancellation, they ring and let you know. They will get someone else to come and help you. So it's so important, that service. If we don't get that service, I really don't know where I will be. It's a big loss someone like me, because if I lose the little sight I have in the left eye, which no guarantee, so I always wonders if there's no service like this, what will happen? That's someone will see it, and I hope you all take that on board and see all these services that they give is needed for us to keep going further into the future.
Thank you. We will take that on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for making the time and the effort to come and meet with us.
I'm very honoured giving me that time, and thank you.
Thank you.
Got the community health people. Yeah, come and.
Welcome.
Hello. Excuse me. Yeah, I gave it to the lady and she copied it. Hello, I'm Liz Chondros. I'm from your Community Health.
So thank you for your very comprehensive submission.
Thank you. So I have prepared some slides to talk through the presentation to our submission. So I'll start with your Community Health. We are formerly known as Darebin Community Health, and we're a health organisation that provides health and wellbeing services to people in Darebin. We've got 4 sites across the Darebin area and have a strong history working closely with Council, as evidenced with providing a response around the aged review of older people in Darebin last year. And working with Council and being supported to deliver programs within the community, including the Social Food Project, and working on the ground collaboratively with staff from Council at our East Reservoir Community Hub in the northern part of the reservoir catchment. We're particularly concerned and focused on with engaging with and meeting the needs of our most marginalised and at-risk people within our community, and that's what the paper really kind of focuses on. In supporting at-risk older people, we are keen to continue to partner with Darebin City Council in responding to the aspirations and needs of older people in Darebin, and using a strength-based approach, working to ensure that our community members who are most at risk don't fall through the service system reforms and changes that occur within our systems. And also looking at how we can support flexible and responsive models to be delivered. It's around looking at the cracks and working to ensure that the more isolated and marginalised older people who are often more likely to be unable to navigate the service system, and how we have people around noticing, caring and looking out for each other and helping older people to access and get the services and supports they need. looking at the increased risk that occurs when systems become more remote from local communities, when they become more online and lose that human contact, what that means for people who don't have access to online services and can become invisible in the changes that happen within systems. A key strategy is really looking at building and nurturing everyday relationships with older people within their community, and looking at how we do this within our neighbourhoods and working across agencies on the ground collaboratively in an outreach setting. Understanding what disadvantage feels like in our neighbourhoods and around our centres and East Reservoir, what we know that many of our clients have life experience of various institutions which makes them fearful of out-of-home residential care. The things they tell us is they don't understand my aged care, how they either can't navigate or don't want to navigate web-based systems and don't have access to these services, and fearful of registering in systems that could put them in a home. They're the things that they feed back to us in our interactions. Understanding what disadvantage looks like within our neighbourhood. So within Darebin, we've kind of narrowed it down to the areas where we do work closely on the ground, where we know that our CIFA ratings, which is our socioeconomic index for financial disadvantage, ratings within our East Reservoir area are much lower than the Darebin average and also much lower than the Victorian average. So we know that there's high areas of social disadvantage within our East Reservoir areas. There are higher numbers of people, older people living within those areas, which there's some stats up there just to highlight the additional needs. We also know that there's other high risk indicators for poor health and wellbeing outcomes within those East Reservoir areas, especially around the Blake Street area where our centre's based. One of our major centres is based. So we know that a lot of the older residents live alone, higher than the state and Darebin average, higher number of people in rental social housing. English is not their first language, or they're not fluent in English, and a higher number of older residents or residents needing assistance due to a disability. What older people have been telling us that they need is familiar, trusted services to support access to services, and those trusted services have often been looking at council as a trusted organisation, and the local community health services similarly. Council is viewed as a trusted provider of vital services, and that relationship building, that takes time to build that trust, and not underestimating how important that is for people to then feel comfortable to access services. And also the many possible roles for Darebin City Council, but also vulnerable older adults, which they need to continue to receive direct services. They also tell us that some of the essential services that they seek is nutritious food and meals, so access to affordable, nutritious food and meals. Social contact and connection is a big one, and the links there with loneliness. Feeling that you belong and are valued in your communities is something that we all seek as individuals. Flexible and accessible transport, which enables that connection with other people. Thinking about housing and places around access to safe and weather appropriate and affordable housing, and places to go to for relief on days like today, for example, and some hands-on help to understand and access services and support for decision making, as well as respite for carers that's flexible and affordable. Opportunities and possibility, potential for services to be adapted or expanded based on service goals rather than products or tasks. So an example is accessing nutritional meals and social interaction, which are both very important things that could easily be met through an adapted service model, similar to some of the projects that have been delivered, such as the Preston Market lunches and the social food project. So looking at things that have been piloted and tested and learning from those. As well as working through the trusted relationships to create places within neighbourhoods where people feel safe to come and drop into without an appointment, without feeling that they have to make an appointment to come into, to find out information, make connections with others. Thinking about cross-sector and issue partnered work, so working together across agencies and addressing the same issue to be able to respond to our most vulnerable and not let them fall through the cracks. And that face-to-face support is important, as well as services to reach out to and be in places where older residents live, go to where older residents are, and find out and prioritise our at-risk older people wherever they are in Darebin, so getting down to that grassroots space. Our hopes is that we do share Council's commitment to be an age-friendly city that values, supports and empowers older people so they can live well, maintain health, be connected socially, and to remain in their homes and their neighbourhoods for as long as possible. And we welcome the opportunity to work together with you and with our community partners and older residents to develop and enable the services for our older people in the City of Darebin.
Thank you.
So your sort of focus on the most vulnerable and your view that that's where DCC should be particularly focused, is that what I'm...
I think it's about with the review and looking at age services, thinking about how we ensure that our most vulnerable in the community are looked after and not lost in the changes. So whatever changes are put in place, that there is something, there is some conscious thinking around what it means for our most vulnerable in the community.
But are you picking up that the most vulnerable in this city are looked after? Do you think they are looked after adequately, the older?
I think there's more to be done.
There's still a lot to be done.
Yeah, around there's how we work together across agencies on the ground to identify where our older residents who are vulnerable, how we ensure that they are getting access to the health and wellbeing services that they need, for example, or to get access to affordable, nutritious meals. And to connect. There's a lot of people who live on their own and are not connected, and we don't know. And how do that's a really hard. How do we do that? But it's about making sure we don't forget that group of our group of residents, and make sure that they have a voice. I suppose that's where our response is really targeted towards ensuring we don't lose. People don't fall through the cracks, because with the siloing in all the changes within our reforms, which that often it is our most vulnerable in the community that can fall through the system gaps, and how we ensure that.
And has the community, have you given thought to how that could work better so that the NGOs and DCC and you...
I think it's about having a coordinated approach. So how we being agencies that are on the ground working together, working with residents, working together in our places, in our place-based settings, to identify solutions to some of the challenges that we have, or if we coordinate our approach across agencies to deal with the same issue. So if access to nutritious food is an issue for a neighbourhood or older people in a certain neighbourhood, how do the three organisations who have got some connection to that neighbourhood work together in a coordinated way? So people are doing some amazing work, but it's around that coordination, that partnership work too, and bring residents into that. So you're working in partnership with the residents and workers from different agencies to come up with solutions together, because we don't know what those solutions are.
And currently you don't think that's a bit hit and miss?
I think that's something that we can all do better in, and I think there's examples of how it can. There's probably little examples of how it can work, and it is working. It's about how we do more of that.
And the data you had on the neighbourhood, I think it was East Reservoir.
Yeah.
Do you have that for all your areas that you work in?
Yeah, so that was data that we got from some of the work that Council's Health and Wellbeing team had done. It's probably about 2 years old now, and I understand that there's newer data coming out soon. So that went down to that neighbourhood level, which that's why it's different to the state average. So it really honed in on the East Reservoir area. So it actually mapped out exactly which parts of Reservoir and East Preston.
But that gives you a real picture, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so if we don't look at, it's about not forgetting that.
So we'll get a copy of the of the PowerPoint, won't we?
Yeah, I can. Yep, I can send that through to.
Thank you very much.
Team.
I thought that was really very
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your focus. There are a couple of the models you've got in this submission that we'd like more detail on too.
Yeah.
Where you've made suggestions. And can we
share.
follow that up? Yeah.
Yeah, and all of the stuff. Yeah.
Great.
Would you like the hard
Yeah,
copy?
definitely. That'd be great. And we'll.
It's always good to check you haven't written on it.
And your contact's there, is it? Because we'll follow you up to get some of these examples fleshed out. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was really great. Claudia,
Yes,
thank you for coming.
thank you.
Like your T-shirt.
Thank you.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claudia Valenti, and I care for my soon-to-be 91-year-old Italian mother who has dementia. I make up part of the group of carers living in Darebin who have no siblings or any other form of immediate family. Instead, my help and support comes in the form of the dementia-specific programs that run at Yanada House, their monthly carer support group meetings, which also include guest speakers, the programs run by Your Community Health, and of course the wonderful services provided by Carer Links North. But how successful would these programs and services be without the wonderful people that fulfil these vital and important roles? I cannot stress enough the difference that the dedicated team of Yanada House and that of Your Community Health's Monday Italian social group have made to my mother's life and well-being, and in doing so have also made a difference to my life. In fact, one might say they have inadvertently become my support, my surrogate family. And just like family, they always provide care, compassion, security, as well as meals and transport. So what does all this mean for me as a carer? It allows me to maintain a certain degree of normality, which in turn helps me to preserve my sanity. Normality and sanity, two very important aspects in life, which some people may otherwise take for granted. And in the event that I were to feel as though I'm struggling, because let's face it, the struggle can be very real as a carer, it is comforting to know that I can rely on Carer Links North for that type of support. So what does the future hold? Who knows? All I know is that for now, my role is as a daughter and as a carer. As a daughter, I know I will always have a roof over my head thanks to my loving and hardworking parents. As a carer, I know that I have the support of Darebin Council to help me be the best carer I can be. But will this support continue to be there moving forward? Will this support continue to be there for the future ageing residents of Darebin and their carers? And what about the ageing carers who may suddenly find themselves needing to access the likes of Yanada House or Your Community Health? I hope the answer is a big fat yes to all of those questions. Why? Because everyone deserves to experience the benefits that come with being part of a family. Thank you. And this is a photo of my mother at Yanada House. I think her smile pretty much says it all. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity.
So at home, do you get personal support care for your mum? Or?
Not at the moment. I'm doing everything myself. With mum's dementia, it's been like a slow progression over time. And so I can still be at home with her.
I think we do need mobiles turned off if we could. Yeah, if we could just have them all off in here as people come in. Yeah.
That's all.
So the service you're getting is Yanada House?
Yes, yeah, and Your Community Health on Mondays.
Right.
Mum attends a social group
right.
for Italians.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that's
yes, the extent of it.
But you're not getting workers at home?
No, no. We don't really need that at the moment. I'm doing everything myself.
Right, yeah. How's that going?
At the moment, I take it day by day. You never know what tomorrow brings, but for the time being, I'm coping. And that's why, for example, Carer Links North is also important, because if ever I am feeling a bit like I am struggling, I know I can rely on them. And I've actually used their counselling services in the past.
And so do you go to their meetings, you know, to the peer support meetings often?
Not often, only when they invite me. I usually receive invitations via email, and if I'm feeling the need to go, yes, I do. They also have outings for carers, and that way you're meeting other people who are in the same situation as you are, because sometimes being a carer, it can feel isolating.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But at least you know you're not alone.
Yeah, yeah. So how often are there meetings?
Well, the meetings at Yanada House, for example, they're once a month, and they're my lifeline. As far as Carer Links North is concerned, they're not as often, but they're there. So.
But Yanada House has a sort of carers group too.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And through Yanada House is how I'm being kept informed.
Right.
With the My Aged Care system and what have you. So.
And how have you? So you're learning.
Yes.
All the complexities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Getting ready.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really...
You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
You remember? Yeah, hello, hello. So, over to me. Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. I've got notes that I'll read off so I can keep to time. The ASU would really like to commend the Council on its process so far and its public positioning and advocacy to date in seeking an extension on block funding of CHSP to beyond 2020 and to provide more certainty, obviously, for staff. I should say, by way of introduction, as you already know, my name is Lisa Darman and I am the Branch Secretary of the ASU, and our primary interest is the workers who deliver the service that is partly under review. So we support the positions that we've seen Council publicly put to date around the extension of the funding and the potential advocacy around the competition policy, and we'll continue to work with whoever is also working on these things to achieve those outcomes. Fundamentally, we think that a greater investment in aged care is both fundamental to providing high quality care that people need and to also achieve a civilised and healthy society. Our submission, which we take as read, is based around the contention that the review should maintain the status quo given the uncertainty in the area, particularly given a federal election next year and the Royal Commission into Aged Care. We think it's the right thing to do for the clients and residents, for the workers, and for public policy around caring for our community and, more broadly, gender equality, which I'll talk about a little bit. In addition to what we've put in our submission, I think we would add a few other things, and they're around evidence from around the world where we are moving to, other parts of the world are moving to a remunicipalisation due to market failure. And whilst some of the things that are under consideration here are beyond the control of Darebin City Council around the move to a market-based approach, what we see is that Council can absolutely do its part to minimise impact on residents as part of this review where we see the outcome of market failure. We've seen instances in Victoria already where we know that the impact on the reform, both in Other parts of Australia, so in South Australia, there is Ubercare that delivers service. I've got some case studies that I can hand over from other parts of Victoria where private providers have taken over and handed back to council services that they can't deliver, and council ends up being service of last resort. We also know that around the world where this has happened in community in-home care, that we've got 0 contract hours for staff, the instances of elder abuse, mostly due to neglect, due to constrained funding around hours, and the anxiety and mental illness of workers due to outcomes that relate to underemployment, insecure work, and a working poor. In the UK, the advances in longevity that the population had enjoyed over a century have gone into a reverse, some of which is as a result of this system. So given we know what the outcomes might be for this community, given the examples we've seen in other states and around the world, we think that Darebin has a clear chance to learn from those places to protect from those sorts of outcomes and in fact enhance what this community is comparatively very lucky to have. And we think that Darebin has an opportunity to be a leader in local government in Victoria to fight against and contribute to meaningful reform in what is to continue to be a vital and growing community service. There is public value, there is legitimacy and support for the service, and there is operational capability, and there's absolutely workforce capability. We think there's also community expectation for council to do this work, and there are numerous examples, as I've said, from around Victoria where system failures have occurred through private providers and council's expected to pick up the pieces. So we think it's imperative that the community infrastructure is maintained and enhanced to respond to community expectation and need. Councils are also publicly accountable and accessible organisations, unlike other providers, in this area of service delivery, and it is unique and it is like no other. And it's important for the vulnerable residents that the model sits that way. So we think, you know, for the structural reasons, it's important to maintain the service and for local government to maintain this stewardship, to continue to innovate whilst maintaining what you have. And considerations of responses to market failure and navigation for residents should also be explored. We think that taking this direction will absolutely contribute to broader social good, as is Darebin City Council's responsibility. So in regards to secure work, most of my experience is in working in the broader community sector where the levels of turnover of staff are extraordinarily high by comparison to the work here. And it is an absolute gift to the workplace and to the residents that the low turnover and dedication of staff could potentially be lost to a private or community-based provider. Continuing to invest in this work contributes to gender equality and human development. Most of the workers who deliver the work are low-paid women, not only because of the good wages in comparison to other providers that deliver this work. The wages are good for workers at Darebin City Council and the conditions, but it also frees other community members who would otherwise be caring for their relatives in this community to take on paid work. Society becomes more productive than individualised care in the family, and in particular, collective care in its absence are likely, I've lost my train of thought. In particular, collective care provision, such as CHSP, enables greater labour market participation of women who, in its absence, are likely to be the ones caring at home. And this is evidenced by what's happened in the UK. And of course, all of this leads to increases in women's earnings and superannuation, where women are engaged in well-paid, secure work, and it, you know, contributes to their superannuation into retirement so that it is comfortable, reduces the gender gap in poverty in retirement, and is another contributor towards narrowing gendered economic inequalities. There's also an efficiency argument around economic development by continuing to invest in the social infrastructure as an employment stimulus tool. Analysis by the International Trade Union Confederation from 2016 shows that for a similar amount of investment in caring industries, as opposed to others such as construction, even when you take into account full-time equivalent work, more jobs are created overall, and the gender gap in employment is reduced. So there are economic benefits for the community as well as the residents themselves who are receiving the service. And obviously critical to this is the dedicated, skilled and experienced workforce. So the 2018 Australian Aged Care Workforce Strategy paper, which was commissioned by the federal government, identified a myriad of workforce challenges which do not exist in Victorian local government home care. Things like high turnover, poor employee engagement, difficulty in attracting staff, undervalued jobs, casualisation of the workforce, leadership effectiveness gaps, and the list goes on. They are all the things we have that, you know, we think we want to protect. And, you know, it feels like a bit of an unscrambling of the egg if we're to learn and know about these things happening and not develop an appropriate response. So we feel it's a really precious and vital part of the system that is at major risk if undone. And I thought, so I'll leave you with a couple of things. I'll finish with, so a couple of our delegates were to come with me today, but the enterprise agreement's being voted on, so they're busy on that task. But this is a quote from just one of our members who says, "For most of us, this isn't just a job. We really care about the people we see every day. They become part of our lives. We see them come and we see them go, and we are proud that we maybe have made a difference to their lives as they have made a difference to ours." So, questions? Yeah.
So council can minimise the impact of my aged care, the other market model, and so in the employment of workers for CHSP or in other ways, you mentioned navigation.
So I think, obviously there are improvements to the system that are absolutely necessary. So we support, you know, whatever arrangements that you can come up with around system navigation in particular, I think, and around safeguarding of residents, around unscrupulous providers and working their way through the system. But we think that's, you know, one part of the puzzle, and that our members who work in people's homes are also a vital part of that system.
Can you send a list of where the system failures in Victoria that you mentioned?
I've got a copy.
The council expected to pick up the pieces of where.
Yep. I've got those case studies here that I can.
So, council's given a commitment, actually, that while the Commonwealth government's in there, they're going to continue.
Block funding continues.
Yeah.
Our existing services will continue.
So did you knew that?
Yes.
So
yes.
that's really.
That's fantastic.
So it's after that, if that, you know, there was a submission. I think it was. Yeah, it wasn't a submission. It was something else. That if, I mean, it's all the jury's a bit out, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
It wasn't out, and now you think there are questions that you about what the Commonwealth government's.
We're hearing some rumours, but nothing that we could hang our hat on around what's going to happen. But I think in a situation where we know we've got funding till 2020, potentially a bit longer, there's time to consider what is the appropriate response. And I guess ultimately, if I've left you with one thing, it would be, while we have this fantastic workforce that once is lost, we should do what we can to maintain it, whilst continuing to look at, obviously, the changing environment around us, because it's very rare in the broader community service system.
Thank you for the detail too.
That's okay.
Particularly, I think, for responding to some of the questions in that discussion.
No problem. Thanks. Okay, I'll just leave the paperwork with you. Thank you for your time. Yes.